Behind the Scene with David Bedein, reporting from Jerusalem, March 3rd, 2020, the day after Israel held its national election. Incidentally, it's the third national election in 1 year. The question was, will there be a resolution this time? Will there be a government? The answer is yes, there will be a government of Israel following this conclusive election. Now, Netanyahu, who has the distinction of being the outgoing prime minister and the incoming prime minister at the same time. And Netanyahu received at least 59, perhaps 60 of the votes in the parliament. We're not sure yet for another 24 hours. We have to see the soldiers, and their votes have to be first counted, and then we'll know for sure. Now, when you look at it from abroad, and even in Israel itself, and you see that he only got a plurality of the vote, you would think that he doesn't have enough to make a coalition or a government. That's not the way it works over here. The person who makes the government is the person with the most candidates for Knesset that have been selected. Now, what he will do will be to make a coalition with the next largest party, which is Blue and White. The Blue and White Party has four major people in it who were commanders-in-chief, all of whom had been appointed by Benjamin Netanyahu. We're talking about Gabi Ashkenazi, we're talking about Moshe Alon, we're talking about Benny Gantz, three commanders-in-chief, all of whom were appointed by Netanyahu, all of whom Netanyahu basically has basic trust in their security abilities, even they have their different approaches to the running of government. Now, what's very important to understand is that the reason why Blue and White will not have a choice in this matter is because they have less delegates than he has, whereas they only have about 54, maybe 55 at the most members of Knesset, and they cannot possibly make a government because their coalition partners on the left in the Democratic, what they call the Democratic Party, the Meretz Party, and the Labor Party, they do not have the votes because they would have to depend on the Arab votes. And by the way, this election witnessed the largest vote ever for the Israeli Arab parties. Now, it's very interesting. The only place in the Middle East where Arabs can vote freely is in Israel. And there is no other place, including the Palestinian Authority, including Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon. There is no such thing as free elections in the Middle East except for here. And that's something that most people don't realize. So he will be making a coalition with the Blue and White Party, and he'll come out stronger in terms of his negotiating stance with the United States and other governments who right now are pushing a new plan, a new project, a new program for negotiations, for Middle East negotiations. What's very important to understand is that this year, President Trump proposed a new, he calls it the deal of the century, and that deal of the century basically provides a full recognition of Israel's right to settle anywhere west of the Jordan River, and at the same time gives a sense of self-rule to the Palestine Liberation Organization, which is also known as the Palestinian Authority. Now, this is the first time that both elements have been incorporated. Now, Netanyahu would have trouble agreeing to any kind of a program for Israel's future if it was only him doing it with a minority government. But bringing Blue and White into the coalition will guarantee Netanyahu a lot of strength, a lot of what we call in the United States, at least, the wiggle room that he's able to manage this kind of a situation. Now, Israel's doing this. This election took place while Israel was being attacked, both from Syria. There was a small sniper attack, a small skirmish on the north, and a major rocket attack from the south, from the Hamas-ruled Gaza. Now, what's important to understand is that these kind of things can spill over into a much larger conflict, larger battle, at any time, any moment. Indeed, someone asked me today, when is there any expectation for further riots and further violence from the other side? And like clockwork, and today is March 3rd. On March 30th, there are planned riots, which will be taking place everywhere that there's an UNRWA camp, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency refugee camp, because it's called Land Day, and I guess it's their excuse for a riot. So that's very important to understand that how they're going to prepare themselves for such a thing will be very important. Now, this time, this election had the unprecedented victory of the Israeli Arab political parties who have achieved a 15 members of the Knesset in the next Knesset, and they're basically starting to prove that 20%, they are 20%, 21% of the population. All of a sudden, they are starting to show their power, something that basically had never happened before in Israel. In Israel, mostly the Israel political parties from the Arab sector had mostly voted for what we call Zionist parties, and those days are over. So the extent to which the Israeli Arabs, who by the way are prospering, even though they're in opposition and very much identify with the Palestine Liberation Organization, they are amongst the most prosperous sectors of the Israeli community. So that's what we have here. Netanyahu winning at least 59 seats of the 120 members of the coalition of the Knesset, excuse me, and the 33 member, it's either 32 or 33 member blue and white opposition are expected to join Netanyahu in the government, in a sense, in a grudging kind of a fashion. It's not what they wanted. They did not want to have it be in a government with Netanyahu as the head, but that is what's going to happen, because that's the only way that blue and white will retain its relevance. There was rumors over the last 24 hours that at least 3 members of the blue and white party would bolt and join the Netanyahu Likud government. However, those 3 members issued a statement that will not happen. So that's the story of what happened here yesterday, and we'll see just how big his majority is after the votes from the soldiers on the front are counted. One of the things that got great attention in Israel and around the world is the fact that Netanyahu, the prime minister, has been indicted for 3 cases of administrative bribery. Now, I've looked at those cases, as have many other journalists looked at those cases. The cases are empty. Cases are superficial. The cases are irrelevant to the running of a country. Someone who did his research found that it's illegal, according to the Israeli law, for a politician to talk to a journalist about adjusting the way the way he's covered in the media. And what Netanyahu did was to meet with 2 editors, and 2 editors of 2 major newspapers in Israel, and to ask them, offer them better coverage, better access to the prime minister's office in exchange for a better positioning in the media. Well, this is not, in any normal circumstance, a bribe, but someone interpreted this as a bribery offense, and that's why on March 17th, and just in 2 weeks, Netanyahu is going to go to trial. It seems to me that that Netanyahu is going to win hands down. The person, a very interesting international lawyer, who's come to Netanyahu's defense, who is not of Netanyahu's political, shall we say, philosophy, is Professor Alan Dershowitz, who looked at these cases and laughed them out. He said these are not cases that one should bring against a politician. So, in my opinion, although this has shaken up Israel, because for Israelis to realize you're voting for an indicted prime minister, there's not too much substance to the issue. Let me give an update also about how the coronavirus has affected Israel. The El Al, which is Israel's national air carrier, has canceled flights, many flights to and from China. And because the virus broke out in northern Italy, now they're starting to stop any air transportation from Italy. And there's about 60 people in Israel who are now quarantined, some of whom were on a cruise ship near Japan, and were taken off the cruise ship after being in quarantine there for 2 weeks. And that's so far what's going on in Israel. However, there are rumors that Israel will soon close its borders to many countries, and that many countries are going to stop flights to Israel. Those are rumors. They have not yet been substantiated. There is a vaccine that has been invented in Israel to deal with the coronavirus. Uh, I don't know too much about it, and I don't have, because this is not my field of specialty, I don't know how to, in a sense, verify the efficiency, the professionalism of these drugs. But I think that by the weekend there'll be some confirmation from official sources in Israel about this. Well, the other thing that's going on is there's been a radicalization of Arab education over here, as evidenced by the films that we have been presenting. That no longer is it just saying the Arabs should in a sense despise Israel, but we actually have the more and more of the Palestinian armed forces going through not only military training but very loud training that seems to be a threat. Now, something that happened on early February, an Arab policeman from the Palestinian security forces, which work together with Israel to keep the peace. An Arab policeman was killed when he tried to murder an Israeli, and instead of the Palestinian security forces and the Palestinian Authority issuing a statement to distance themselves from this killer, when he was killed, he was memorialized in a big ceremony at the Jericho Training Center for the Palestine Security Forces, and he was honored as a hero, as a martyr. And this is unprecedented, because at least this has never been publicly happened before, because the PSF, the Palestine Security Forces, as I just mentioned, are actually in an alliance with the Israel Defense Forces. So it's like we do know that President Trump recently cut back the funding of the PSF, the Palestine Security Forces, whereas Israel maintains its support for the PSF. Speaking very openly and very clearly, our agency, the Center for Near East Policy Research, issued several reports warning that the PSF is filled with members of terrorist organizations, and to be very wary about depending on them for anything. Those reports can be found on our website, israelbehindthenews.com.